What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. So today, we are going to be going back to my home park of Cedar Point. Fortunately for us, new during the 2023 season, we have the brand new boardwalk area. This provides a lot of new experiences that we did not see before. Fortunately, I've gotten to experience everything already, including the Grand Pavilion and the Wild Mouse roller coaster, so today I wanted to review them and talk about how they compare to the other Cedar Point coasters. So let's get right into it. This is Cedar Flags, and today we are going to review the new boardwalk and ask if it is good for Cedar Point. So first, let's get down to business and talk about the Wild Mouse. This is the new for 2023 Zamperla Twister Freeform Coaster, and to say the least, it looks incredible when you're even off the ride. It is very cute, it's very tiny, and it definitely fits in its tiny plot of land. I was shocked to see that you can't even see it from the causeway unless you look very, very close. In fact, I didn't see the Wild Mouse until I was in the parking lot. And even then, I only saw the cat and the top of the lift hill. So while I didn't get any really good off-ride shots from outside the park, I was eager to get inside and check out the Wild Mouse credit for myself. So unfortunately, the first time I was here at Cedar Point's opening day, this ride was closed for a majority of the day, and unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to ride it. But to say the least, I took a lot of off-ride shots, and it seems like the problem with the ride's operations has kind of stopped a little bit, and the ride has been open a lot more than it was earlier in the season. So I decided to take another day trip up here, this time in later May. Now, if you saw my last video about Cedar Point, you will know the story, but I finally got on Wild Mouse. So how was it? Well, to say the least, the surrounding entrance and the environment that it's in is absolutely beautiful. Everything looks extremely vibrant, and you could tell that everything is new. I mean, it looks like it was just placed down here, but at the same time, it has that very old school feel. You have a constant soundtrack playing of many classic Oceanside songs, and with it being right next to some of the classic flat rides like the Matterhorn and the Troika, it is an absolutely incredible experience. It makes you look like you're actually walking on a boardwalk, and though it doesn't have the same amount of theming as some other areas, I think for Cedar Point standards, it does a really good job at portraying this boardwalk. The queue is your basic switchback queue, but it is complemented by an absolutely beautiful entrance sign that is very reminiscent of the old one, and a little bit of lore behind the different names of the mice, and of course, you could look at the ride itself. Anyways, you finally get to the station and board the trains. And to say the least, I love these trains. They're very similar to your average Zamperla spinning coaster, but they are a lot more comfortable and the restraints are a lot more modern. I would say I was in the station for no more than about 40 seconds, which is pretty decent for Cedar Point standards. But you go out of the station and take a left-hand turn into the lift hill. You could hear all these sound effects that are very reminiscent of shows like Tom and Jerry, The Cat and Mouse, and you reach the top and you see the good old cat. So you are at the very top of the lift hill, getting some pretty decent views of the lake and Windseeker. But there is not that much time to look because you are going right down the drop. And unlike many spinning coasters, you spin almost instantly. I mean, it seems like the very moment that gravity takes over, you are automatically off spinning, and you can go any which way at this point. There are many of these Zamperla and Reverchon Wild Mouse spinning coasters that don't wait to spin until the final half of the ride, which to be honest I'm not really a big fan of because I'm a huge fan of these spinning coasters. Right after this little dip you go into the first of many block sections, but the trims do not slow you down, at least to when I was there. And this is where it really depends on how good of a ride you're going to get. If you get a good spin, it's going to be a thrilling time, but if you don't get a good spin, it's not going to be the most thrilling experience, but still a pretty good time. That's what makes this ride very unique. I got to ride this twice, and the first time I spun crazy the entire ride, and the second time I barely spun at all, so it really gave me these two different perspectives. But to say the least, no matter what, this ride is going to be a fun experience. Anyways, you go over the first of many sharp turns to the greeting of a very nice spin, if you are lucky, and a little bit of a meandering and straight track if you're not so lucky. Anyways, there are a couple more of these before you get whipped over into a set of overbank turns. Now personally, this is my favorite part of the ride, because you are going through these very sharp overbank turns while you are spinning. And no matter what, if you got a good spin earlier, if you got a bad spin earlier, you are going to be moving during this point. You could be constantly sideways, you could be constantly spinning, you could even be backwards. It does not matter, you will be moving during this period of the ride. Even if the seat is completely balanced, you will be moving due to the interesting shaping of the track. Now, here is the thing that surprised me the most about this ride. One of the overbank turns halfway through the ride is extremely disorienting, and if you're sitting on an edge seat, you might actually get a pop of airtime. As an enthusiast that likes more thrilling rides, this was probably the highlight of the ride for me. It had very unexpected forces for a ride like this, and even though that it wasn't the most forceful, it was, to say the least, a little more than I expected. Anyways, after that you go into the next part of straight track, and you go into the final part of the ride, which is where you just meander around, go through a few sharp turns. And this whole part of the ride is low to the ground. You're probably no more than 20-30 feet off the ground at this point while you are meandering, but luckily for you, you are most likely spinning at this point. And all of the transitions are smooth, even though they may be a little abrupt, they are all smooth. This part of the ride is definitely the most tame part of the ride, but it is still very fun. You're probably still spinning at this point, and you are just having a great laugh. Finally, you go into a brake run, make 2 left turns, and you are in the final brake run, concluding your ride. Well, at least concluding the track ride. Because there is a little bit of a surprise at the end. You make a full 360-degree rotation with some extra added sound effects before you go back into the station. And if you've ridden some of these Wild Mice coasters, you know that there is a little bit of a jerk when you're rotating back. But in this case, there is not anywhere to be found. That is right, there is no jerk whatsoever. It is extremely smooth, and it guides you right to the station. It is, like I said, extremely smooth, it is extremely fun, and though it's not extremely forceful, I think it is an extremely good fit here at Cedar Point. It fills in all of the boxes. So up next, we are going to be talking less about the rides and more about the actual Grand Pavilion. This is the brand new 2-story building that they made in the spot of Wicked Twister and is a multi-purpose building. They have multiple restaurants, a bar, and a few observation decks, some looking over the lake and some looking over the park. It is really your experience to pick. And I'm going to be completely honest, you could talk to my enthusiast friends, but this was way better than I ever imagined. Now, I remember when they first announced this last year, and I was pretty skeptical on it. Oh, Cedar Point's getting another restaurant. Oh well. But later, as the renderings came in, I realized this was more than what they usually did. There are multiple dining options throughout the entire premise, and there are so many meal options to get. When I was there, I got some of the wings there, and I have to say, those are some of the best wings I've ever had at Cedar Point. And honestly, with places like Backbeat Q and Hugo's and this place now, Cedar Point really is doing good when it comes to their restaurants. I remember about 10 years ago when you had choices, you didn't really have that much, and you would probably just resort to eating chicken tenders or fries or something like that. If you're over the age of 21, there is also a massive bar on the second floor of the premise. Now, you are allowed here if you're under 21, you're just not allowed to have a drink. It is a completely open area. So if you're not allowed to go and drink, you could still roam around. To say the least, the food and drink selections here are way beyond what I could ever comprehend. What I was most expecting at the beginning was like 3 or 4 options, and then basic soft drinks, but like I said, they went all out. And including that, the whole entire premise of it is beautiful as well. They have swing versions of older pop songs on the radio. The facilities are extremely clean and up to point, and the architecture of this combines the new modern set of Cedar Point with the old back front of Cedar Point back in the day. Now finally, I want to talk about some of the other additions that we saw with this expansion. We saw some retheming of some of the old rides, which I absolutely love. But in this part of the video, I do have a couple nitpicks. Nitpick number 1. With these flat rides over here in the boardwalk area, where the Atomic Scrambler and the Himalayas used to be, that area is completely deserted now, so I would love to see something there soon, instead of this area just being completely deserted for the next few years. And my second main complaint, the fact that Wild Mouse hasn't really had the best of operations. Now, I have discussed this a little bit, and Cedar Point has had a little bit of problems with operations lately, but I was not expecting this much trouble with their Wild Mouse. And especially compared to the other Zamperla Wild Mice I've ridden, this ride has probably been down the most compared to some of those others. But I do have faith that they fixed out the kinks, as it hasn't had many breakdowns in a while. Regarding this area as a whole, I think they did a phenomenal job. It looks pretty, plus if you're not big into roller coasters, you have a new place to chill at the Grand Pavilion. I mean, you could just stand up there and people watch all day. That is completely up to you. But anyways, what do you think about the boardwalk area? Personally, I think it is a really good fit for Cedar Point, and I hope that they could hold on to this for a while and maybe even further expand it. Anyways, what do you think about this area? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and until next time, this is Cedar Flags, and I'll see you all later.